All right, so for absolute value, which is our next bit of notes, so absolute value, we're going to talk absolute value equations first. But when we're talking absolute value, which are the sticks, I always call them the sticks, they're absolute values, and we need to go back to the definition and the basics of absolute value. So, absolute value is just the distance or spaces from zero. So a lot of times when I do absolute value, once I get so far in the problem, I really revert back to a number line so that I can think about things. But in general, what you can hopefully remember is absolute value of stuff equals, and it's always going to be number of spaces. Okay, and since it's a number of spaces, which is something that we can count, it's a physical thing. This over here cannot be a negative number. Because we can go in a negative direction, we just can't go a negative number of spaces, at least not with the technology we have currently. All right, so the other thing that you do need to remember with absolute value is the absolute value are not parentheses. They're not the same as parentheses. They are a type of grouping symbol, but they have a definite purpose for them and a definite definition, meaning that the number of spaces. So since they're not like parentheses, do not distribute. All right, so just it's in the overview of the Cornell notes as well, but I just want to reiterate we're never going to distribute it into absolute values. Now, in general, when we're talking equations, um, absolute values are we're going to solve similar to how we solve equations. Similar. Um, the general rules are one, get absolute value alone. And then I like to think of to make separate equations. I don't need the comma there. So it's think of the spaces on the number line. And where I do that is that's the other part of make your two equations. Negative number. Um, the other thing that you can do is some people will do absolute values thinking of it as a pivot point. We're always going to be equal distance from that center of them. So we can think of it as another way. But I find that most students find it a little easier to do it this way. And it ties in closely with our inequalities, which we're just going to add one more step to it when we have it. All right, so our general thing is absolute values is the spaces from zero. We're going to solve similar to equations. The only deal is we can't distribute into them, so we're going to have to get everything away from them. So get the absolute values by themselves first. Once the absolute value is by itself, that's when we're going to say, oh, how many spaces are we talking, and make sure that it's not a negative number. So if we're looking at the examples, we're not going to do all of these in the video, but I will put all of them up in our notes. But I just want to look at a few of them. So starting with the first one, we have an absolute value, but there's other stuff on that side with the absolute values. So I'm not going to be concerned yet with the fact that the other side that doesn't have an absolute value is a negative number. So first thing that I want to do with this one is get that absolute value of x plus 3 all by itself. Just like with parentheses, I have a multiplication in between that negative 2 and that x. However, I can't distribute that negative 2 in. So I have to undo the multiplication. So I'm going to divide by negative 2. I know fractions are so much fun. It's just, that's how I always write divided by. It's just a little easier. Fractions become friendly as you get more practice with them. All right, so because this is a division and a multiplication, they are opposites and they cancel each other out. It is the operations that we're talking. Now, a negative divided by a negative is positive, and 14 divided by 2 is 7. So this leaves me with the absolute value of x plus 3 equals 7. So the stuff that I'm working at has to be 7 spaces from 0. So what I do is think of the number line. I don't actually draw the number line, but I'm thinking, oh, if I'm going to be 7 spaces from 0, I'm going to be at negative 7 and at 7. So I'm going to put that in my problem like that. So my problem, when I break it down, is going to be negative 7, because that would be further to the left, equals, because it's whatever symbol I have here, x plus 3, and then x plus 3 equals 7. Those are my 2 equations that I'm going to do, and I get to solve each one of those and to get my 2 answers. So we're going to subtract 3 from both sides. I'm going to do both of them at the same time, so I'm going to subtract 3. On this one, I have a negative 7 minus 3. They're the same sign. Add them together, keep the sign. So this is a negative 10 equals x. And this one, I have the 3's cancel out. And I have x equals 7 minus 3, because negatives can also become, think of as minuses. They're opposite signs. I am subtracting them, keeping the signs to the bigger one. So 7 minus 3 is 4. 7 was positive. So my 2 answers are negative 10 and 4. If you want to put them in like a set notation, it would be the curly brackets and negative 10 and 4. Okay, so get the absolute value by itself, check what answers we have, and we're going to go from there. All right, let's do just that. We'll do this top row, and then I'll leave the bottom row for you guys to practice on your own, and you can check from the answer key that I will be uploading. So the next problem that we have is we have negative 21 equals 3 halves, fun, times the absolute value of 4n minus 5 minus 27. So we want to get the absolute value by itself. So we're going to get rid of anything added or subtracted first, move things away from that absolute value. So we're going to add 27 to both sides. All right. And then we have 6 equals 3 halves times the absolute value of 4n minus 5. All right, I'm going to do the same that I've done before. I've got stuff times that absolute value, so I'm going to divide by that stuff. So I'm going to divide by 3 halves. I'm going to write it this way. It's going to look a little awful to begin with. Now, remember, when I have a division with more fractions, it is always the top divided by. I can change the sign. So I'm going to put this up here. So this is the same thing as 6 divided by my fraction, the 3 halves. And then what I can do is I keep, change, flip. So 6 times 2/3. Now, when I have fractions, I like everything to be a fraction. I can multiply straight across, or I can reduce anything top with anything bottom. In this case, I am going to reduce. I'm going to take 3 goes into 6. 3 goes into 3 one time, divided by 3. This will be 2, and now I can multiply straight across. 2 times 2 is 4. 1 times 1 is 1. So all of this just equals 4. So that's what I'm going to put for my problem. So 4 equals the absolute value of 4n minus 5. Looking at this, I have the stuff that I have. So 4n minus 5 has to be 4 spaces. The answer to that has to be 4 spaces from 0. So this is valid. It's a positive number. So I'm really going to make my two things thinking, okay, from the left, I would have the negative 4 is equal to 4n minus 5. And then 4n minus 5 equals 4. Solving each one of these, we will be adding 5 to both sides. And I'll do both of them at the same time. So this is negative 4 plus 5. Opposite signs, subtract them. So 5 minus 4 is 1 equals 4n. And then this one, I have 4n equals 9. Divide by 4. Divide by 4 to get n by itself. So I have n equals 1/4 and n equals 9/4, which is perfectly good. The answers are fractions. I will leave them exactly like that, even though the second one is an improper fraction. Perfectly fine. Just leave it as a fraction because I don't like mixed numbers. All right. They're just more work than they're worth. Well, no. If you need a mixed number, they're great to see what a number is, but for working math-wise and stuff, it's easier to have improper fractions. All right, so then the last one that we're going to do in the video is this third one, which is the negative 7 times the absolute value of x minus 1 equals 21. I want to get the absolute value all by itself, so I'm going to divide both sides by negative 7. Remember, the sign has to go with it. So this will give me, change colors, so we have absolute value of 4x minus 1 equals positive divided by negative is a negative. 21 divided by 7 is 3. In this case, I have an absolute value equals a negative number. I cannot go a negative spaces from 0, so this is no solution since we have the equal sign. All right, and then we're going to finish the rest of it and upload everything. So you'll see the answers for the last two in the work. However, we'll finish the video right now.